So when you look at this table, I know it can be pretty overwhelming to start with. So I'm just going to explain what all of these symbols mean at the top first and identify which ones we need and which ones we can actually kind of hide and get rid of. First of all, capital N is the number of participants that were in that condition. So 6,419 people did a condition with an active mastery experience. K is the number of studies that included an active mastery experience within them. Q is the statistic for heterogeneity, which we've mentioned earlier, and the number of asterisks here refer to whether it's statistically significant or not. The D statistic refers to the effect size on self-efficacy of the intervention that included, for example, an active mastery experience. The confidence interval here refers to the error around that effect size. Now, what makes this table particularly confusing is that all of those statistics are available for the studies in which an active mastery experience was present and all the studies in which it wasn't present. So, how are we going to resolve this? Well, that's what this final statistic is for, this Z statistic. You can see if we look at the top row, the effect size is almost the same whether an active mastery experience is present or absent. It's 0.17 when we use an active mastery experience, and it's 0.15 when we don't. And so the Z statistic allows us to look at whether the difference between those two is significant or not.
Now, remember, using the conventions in statistics, 1 asterisk means it's statistically significant at 0.05, 2 is at 0.01, and 3 is at 0.001, meaning it's kind of very significant. Doesn't really mean anything because statistical significance is really just an indicator of whether it could have happened by chance. As you scroll down, you can see that the ones that have asterisks are the ones that we want to highlight and look into more detail. The ones without any asterisks next to them means that there's no statistically significant difference between having that intervention and not having it. So let's go through and highlight the ones that are statistically significant. You can see there's a statistically significant result for graded mastery, vicarious experience, verbal persuasion, persuasion by other means, feedback on past performance, feedback on others' performance, feedback given verbally, message feedback, barrier identification, and problem solving. Now, just because it's statistically significant doesn't mean that it's better to include it. To do that, we have to have a look at whether the effect size is bigger when it's present or when it's absent. Let's start with the first significant finding, which is graded mastery. If you have a look at the effect sizes here, when graded mastery is present, the effect size is only 0.03, meaning that including graded mastery means the whole intervention doesn't have a very big influence on the person's self-efficacy. When graded mastery is absent, people's self-efficacy goes up. The effect size without graded mastery is 0.19, and this is statistically significant, this difference. This means that interventions that use graded mastery perform less well than the ones that don't. The same can be found for verbal persuasion. You can see that the effect size for interventions without verbal persuasion is 0.22. That's almost double the effect size as when you do use verbal persuasion at 0.11. Finally, if you scroll right down to the bottom, barrier identification and problem solving follow the same pattern. The effect size for interventions that include barrier identification and problem solving is only 0.1. As soon as you get rid of those strategies, self-efficacy improves. The effect size for interventions without barrier identification and problem solving is more than double that at 0.23. And again, this is a statistically significant difference. All these strategies highlighted in red appear to be hurting people's self-efficacy, actually making it go backwards. What about the other strategies? What actually helps? Well, if we scroll down from the top, the first thing that we come across is vicarious experience. Being able to see someone else succeed triples the effectiveness of the intervention on someone's self-efficacy. You can see the self-efficacy improvements for people who do get vicarious experience is 0.32 versus those who don't get any vicarious experience is only 0.11. Similarly, people's feedback on their past performance is massively important. When you include feedback on someone's past performance or even on someone else's performance, the effect size is 0.44. When you don't include it, it's a quarter of that at 0.11. This means we get a moderate effect size on self-efficacy when you include things like feedback on past performance and vicarious experience, and you get a very small effect size when you don't include those things. Interestingly, the way we provide that information matters. Feedback given verbally is a lot like verbal persuasion. When you just provide verbal feedback, the effect size is 0.07. When you don't provide the verbal feedback, the effect size is 0.19. Instead, what you need to provide by the looks of things is some sort of objective feedback about someone's performance or the performance of someone else who's similar to them. For example, providing it in a message or written format seems to have twice the effect size of not providing any sort of feedback via that format. So, if we come down the list, barrier identification hurts. Problem solving hurts self-efficacy. Goal setting didn't do anything. Actually doing exercise didn't do anything. But seeing other people succeed was fantastic. Trying to persuade someone that they should believe in themselves didn't work. And feedback made a massive difference. Finally, graded mastery, breaking a big task up into smaller goals, led to lower self-efficacy.